World War II. It was, without a doubt, the most destructive war in all of human history. But something that big, that devastating, it doesn't just happen out of the blue. Nope, it was a chain reaction. It was like a series of dominoes, each one knocking over the next, pushing the world closer and closer to total chaos. So today, we're going to follow that chain. We're going to see how each domino fell, right from the very beginning.
It really is the biggest question, isn't it? How does the entire planet end up at war? You might imagine some single, huge, dramatic explosion that kicks it all off. But the truth is, the fire that became World War II, well, it started with just a tiny spark, a long, long time before the first shot was even fired. And believe it or not, it all goes back to a single document, a piece of paper signed back in 1919 that was supposed to end the First World War for good, but instead, it planted the seeds for the second. Okay, so here we go. Domino number 1, the Treaty of Versailles. Now, on the surface, this treaty was all about making sure the horrors of World War I never happened again. But for Germany, it ended up becoming this massive symbol of national humiliation. And this is the heart of it. Article 231, better known as the War Guilt Clause. This wasn't just some legal footnote. It forced Germany to look the world in the eye and say, yep, this was all our fault. It put the entire weight of a global war squarely on their shoulders, and that became the justification for everything that came next. And what came next was the bill. Germany was ordered to pay $33 billion in damages. To put that in perspective, in today's money, that's about $270 billion. I mean, it was a completely impossible amount. In fact, it was so impossible that Germany only made its final payment for this debt in 2010. Yeah, almost a century later. And the fallout back then? It was immediate and catastrophic. To try and pay this impossible debt, the German government did the only thing it could think of. It just printed more money. A lot more money. And that triggered one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history. It got so bad that by 1923, a single loaf of bread cost 200 times billion marks. Your life savings could barely buy you lunch. The economy wasn't just broken, it was completely shattered. So you've got this perfect storm, right? An entire nation is on its knees, their economy is in ruins, their national pride is gone, and that kind of desperation, well, it's fertile ground for some very extreme, very dangerous ideas. And that chaos perfectly set the stage for our second domino to fall, a man named Adolf Hitler. Now, Hitler was a master at playing on people's fears. He tried to seize power in 1923 and failed, but ironically, it just made him more famous. Then, when the Great Depression hit the globe, things got even worse in Germany. Millions were unemployed. And suddenly, Hitler's radical message started to sound pretty good to a lot of desperate people. By 1933, he had used that desperation to grab total control. His formula for winning people over was terrifyingly simple. First, he told them that all their problems, they weren't their fault. No, he gave them scapegoats. He blamed the Jews and the socialists. Then, he made them a promise. He would restore Germany's pride, get rid of the enemies, and build a powerful, racially pure German empire. All right, so domino number 3 starts to teeter. Hitler now has absolute power, and he immediately starts to flex Germany's military muscle. And what was the world's reaction to all this? Well, for the most part, they just kind of watched. Remember that treaty? Yeah. One of its main points was that Germany was forbidden from having a real military. But by 1935, Hitler just went ahead and unveiled a brand new air force. Then he marched his troops right into Austria and made it part of Germany. You see, a lot of leaders in Britain and France felt guilty about the treaty, thinking maybe it had been too harsh. So at first, they just looked the other way. This whole strategy had a name: appeasement. The idea was, hey, maybe if we just give Hitler what he wants, he'll be satisfied and we can avoid another horrible war. It reached its peak when they literally gave him a piece of Czechoslovakia. The British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flew home and famously declared he had secured peace for our time. Yeah, that peace didn't last long. Not even close. Less than 6 months later, Hitler's tanks rolled in and took the rest of Czechoslovakia. It was a brutal lesson. Appeasement didn't calm Hitler down, it just made him bolder. It showed him he could take whatever he wanted and nobody would stop him.
And that brings us to the 4th domino. This is the big one, the point of no return. Hitler now had a new target in his sights: Poland. But before he invaded, he made one of the most shocking and cynical deals in history. Hitler, who absolutely hated communism, signed a non-aggression pact with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union. Why? To make sure he wouldn't have to fight a war on two fronts. And what most people didn't know was that they had a secret agreement to slice Poland right down the middle and share the pieces.
And on September 1st, 1939, he made his move. 1 million German soldiers poured over the border into Poland. And that was it. That was the final straw. Britain and France finally said enough is enough. They gave Hitler an ultimatum: pull your troops out or else. He ignored them. And just like that, the world was plunged into its second global war in just over 20 years.
But this war, it was going to be completely different from the last one. Hitler had a radical new way of fighting, a strategy that would bring almost all of Europe to its knees in a matter of months. The final dominoes were about to fall, and they were going to fall fast. The Germans had a terrifying new playbook called Blitzkrieg. It literally means lightning war. After the slow, grinding trench warfare of World War I, this was something else entirely. It was all about speed, surprise, and hitting your enemy with so much force, so quickly, that they never even have a chance to fight back. So how did it work? It was basically a brutal 1-2-3 punch. First, huge groups of tanks, the Panzers, would smash a hole right through the enemy's front lines. At the exact same time, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, would be bombing everything behind the lines: headquarters, supply routes, communication. The combination of chaos and lightning speed would just completely paralyze the enemy. But there was another piece to this puzzle: a really dark, secret weapon. To keep up this insane pace, German soldiers were often given a powerful drug called pervitin. Today, we know it as crystal meth. It allowed them to fight for days and nights on end without any sleep, creating what seemed like a truly unstoppable superhuman army. And the results? I mean, they were just staggering. Look at this timeline. In April of 1940, Denmark and Norway are gone. The very next month, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg all fall. And then, by June, the unthinkable happens. France, one of the world's great military powers, surrenders. It all happened in a blur. The German army was moving so fast, they actually trapped the entire British and French armies on the coast at a place called Dunkirk. In what many still call a miracle, a makeshift fleet of military ships and ordinary civilian boats managed to evacuate nearly 350,000 soldiers from the beaches, saving them from certain destruction. So picture this. It's the summer of 1940. Hitler has conquered pretty much all of Western Europe. The Soviet Union is his buddy for now, and the United States is still staying out of it. It truly looked like Hitler was the undisputed master of Europe. Only one nation was left standing in his way: Great Britain. Which leaves us with one heck of a terrifying question. With an entire continent under his control and an army that seemed absolutely invincible, what in the world could possibly stop the Nazi war machine?